Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today I have with me Nitin Pachisia, who is currently founding partner at Keywork and Unshsackled Ventures. Now, beforehand, he led the executive level where he did capital raising, project coordination, and of course, he focused on financial transformation as well. But Nitin, can I hear more about your background from your perspective and what led you to what you're doing today?
Arian, good to meet you, and thanks for having me on. My career projection is interesting. I started working at 12 with my dad on his small business, and I worked with him for 3 years. And then I had to run that business to sustain the family for 6 years until I finished my undergrad and was able to take my first job, which was with a company called ABB. And what you will hear throughout this projection, throughout the career trajectory, is there was a little bit of intentionality, a lot of luck, and a good amount of preparation involved. And so, for instance, when I was ready to look at my first job, I passed on 40 job offers to take the 41st, which was with ABB, even though I needed the money. But the reason was all the other 40 jobs were desk jobs. I would have become an accountant, and maybe I would have still been working as an accountant somewhere in India. The ABB job gave me the opportunity to see the world beyond what I had seen. And so, I traveled about 28 days a month in that internal consulting role with ABB, and I got to work in a highly sophisticated, very mature organization. And that led to 3 years of doing that at ABB, where I met some folks from Deloitte, and then they approached me to join Deloitte. That's how I came to the US in 2005. So each of these are like human links. The only job I actually interviewed for was the ABB job. Everything else was a chain of human connections, and that's what led to coming to Deloitte, doing that growth management practice that I started for startups, which led to my next job at No, where I led finance and strategy, and then came across an opportunity just looking at where problems are, and saw that we have a skill set to solve that with Trimble, which was a experiential shopping problem we were solving. I was on an H-1B visa at the time. And so while the business was growing, I became the bottleneck because my co-founders could leave their jobs and go full time, and I could not. Yeah. And trying to navigate that, I became much smarter on immigration than I ever wanted to be. And so I took that knowledge and I thought, if I can solve it for myself, maybe I can also do it for thousands of other founders who are stuck in academia or big companies and are on visas. That became Unshsackled Ventures, and that became my life for the last 11 years, was unlocking the entrepreneurial upside. And now I'm doing the exact same thing with Keywork, just shifting the lens from unlocking tech and hyperscale type founders to instead going in the real economy and creating an institutional capital and resource solution for real economy entrepreneurs.
Perfect. So we're going to get to Unshsackled Ventures and Keywork, of course, but something I don't want to disregard is the fact that you started working on businesses at the age of 12, all the way through undergrad. What did you notice were the skills you were learning in that time period that you were potentially not attaining from traditional education?
I don't know if I ever actually used my academic education in any way. I'm by degree, I'm a chartered accountant. I never practiced accounting, but what chartered accountancy teaches you is working with extreme rigor, deep prioritization of what you need to spend your time on. Because you talk to anyone who is a chartered accountant, they'll tell you it's one of the most rigorous things to do. And so I think when I had to run the family business to sustain the family at 15 to 21, I would go to school, come back, and then immediately start working on this business. And so the element of just deep work ethic, grit, prioritizing what's important was the learning from that, and obviously survival. and that kind of continues, that stays with you. And so like one of my deficiencies is I didn't learn how to have fun. So even when I have time, I have to I have to go out of the way to learn how to have fun. And so there's obviously a downside to everything and an upside to everything.
Well, you and
But
I have
that's
something in common. I'm actually 21 as well, and I've been focusing on this for a while. As you know, today's Saturday, so I actually have the same problem as you, and I have to take some probably take some advice from you after this is done. But I think it did probably teach you more about business, specifically operations wise, than potentially what you've learned in college. So, what did you learn specifically on the technical side of business?
it's I think business is about a relationship with money and relationship with people and how they
Hmm.
intersect. And so um, you can be very transactional and have a really efficient relationship with money, and that can take you so far. And then comes a
Hmm.
point where to grow beyond that, you actually need relationships with people. And so you have to learn how to also connect with people and maintain those relationships. And so I think the uh, just doing that at a very early at a young age kind of builds some intuition into you that you
Hmm.
don't have to like learn, you don't have to go to school to learn how to cost things, how to calculate profits, how to manage cash flow. It just becomes habit. And so I think that's one of the things that became habit. The other thing that has been a really unique strength for me throughout has been being able to solve problems by looking at first principles. And
Hmm.
so things that appear to be systematic or somebody else needs to do something to solve this problem. Take immigration as an example, what we were solving at Unshsackled. Um, Everybody has criticized the American immigration system for, oh, we don't have a solution for H-1Bs who want to start companies. Criticism is very easy and cheap.
Hmm.
Then what's the solution? I actually believe the American immigration system is among the best in the world, which is why
Hmm.
the most ambitious, talented people come to the US. It can be better, yes. It can be frictionless, yes. But that system is good. What we need to do is find, like, look at the structure and see what can
And
we
understand it.
as private sector businesses do to make it easier to use that system. And so that's kind of when I saw that problem, I looked at it as this is not for the government to solve. What can I do here to solve it? And so we took it down to the very small pieces. Like think of a big piece that you can break down into small Lego pieces
Hmm.
and then put it back together as a solution. And that's kind of the same. Like I don't think I had to go to school to learn that. Nobody taught me that, but it just became habit because I started doing it so early. And I'm guessing by observation, I learned it from my dad. I learned it from other people that were around me. Um,
Hmm.
Same thing with Keywork. We've designed a new capital structure. We're designing a new business model for software. It's
Hmm.
not it's not anything groundbreaking. It's not what will cure cancer or take us to Mars, but it is what will solve problems for thousands of real economy entrepreneurs.
Right. So tell me a little bit more about the founding story behind, specifically, if you can, on Unshackled Adventures, because I believe that was the first before Keywork.
Correct. So in July 2012, I started a company called Trimble, which was an experiential commerce company with two co-founders. This came out of a personal experience of going for shopping for cosmetics with my wife, and she would say, "Okay, I need you to come with me because opinions, etc." And I would go there. We were early adopters of online shopping. So we were buying
Hmm.
everything online except cosmetics, beauty products that my wife would drag me to a store to look at. And so what I started observing was there's something about buying these kind of products that even the most avid online shoppers need to have that physical experience. So,
Hmm.
observe that, and then with a couple co-founders came up with a way in which you could get that same experience that you get at a store but at home. And so that started
Mhm.
working. We started executing on it. The customer base started growing. Our customers were two. We were effectively a marketplace, so beauty brands on one side and shoppers on the other side, and we had plenty of both. This business, by the way, even though it was a tech business, was profitable from day one, because speaking of relationship with money, I figured like what we are doing is beneficial to beauty brands, so they should pay to be on our
Right.
platform. And so I monetized them even before we built our shopping cart. And the challenge was I needed to be full time now to grow the business, and I
Mhm.
was on H-1B, and so lawyers told me you can't be the CEO of a company in which you are on H-1B. This is in 2012. So I kept looking for solutions and kept looking for an attorney who would actually have a solution to this. Eventually, the solution I found was I can't be an employee of the company, but if I'm on an H-4 dependent visa, then I have the right to stay in the country as a dependent
Okay.
on my spouse's H-1B visa.
Okay.
And I can do voluntary work. I can't be gainfully employed on that H-4 visa. But these are things that I had to spend a lot of time with immigration attorneys to break things down into like, what is the real problem and stuff.
Mhm.
A year and a half later, I knew a lot of nuances about different types of visas and how
Mhm.
each visa has certain conditions of what you can do and can't do. So if you understand the nuances, not the top level stuff that everybody talks about, which is you can't do this on your H-1B, or you can't do this on your F-1, but you really go down into the details, you can then figure out what exactly you cannot do, and then
Mhm.
overcome that by designing a solution with what you can do. So
Mhm.
that's what we did with Unshackled Ventures. That's like the shift for Unshackled Ventures was a product of I have figured out a way that H-1B people who are on H-1B or TN or other employer-sponsored visas can work for an employer. They are not allowed to be self-employed. And so if we
Mhm.
create a research lab where we hire the people, and therefore they are working for the research lab, and
Mhm.
we let them innovate on what they want to innovate on, and then
Mhm.
alongside, when they are ready to commercialize this, so as the research and development is done, we are investing capital in the business that commercializes this. We are now starting a venture firm, or venture became the business model to actually execute on it. And so it was an accidental entry into the venture world. I never thought I would become an
From your
investor.
own experience.
Yes. Never wanted to be an investor. I still don't operate as an investor. I'm very much an operator. I need to stay engaged with solving problems to keep moving forward. And investing was a part of our business to
Okay.
unlock the entrepreneurs, or in other words, investing was the best business model versus charging a service fee to the entrepreneurs, which I don't believe in that business model. Um,
Mhm.
so that's how Unshackled came about.
Interesting. So you created a pathway for immigrants to become entrepreneurs, because traditionally on an H-1B visa, from what I'm understanding, they had to be working under a company that was sponsoring them. But there's
Yeah.
no existing pathway where they can become an entrepreneur.
Correct. So that's right. There's a lot of attempts on a startup visa, and the legislature couldn't pass the startup visa. We have what's called the International Entrepreneur Parole. It is a very difficult, onerous process to get that. So as an entrepreneur, you would spend a lot of time, and the investors have to spend a lot of time to provide the documentation that's needed for it. But if you're a founder, you don't have time to do all this, right? Your time is
Right.
going into building your business. And so what we created was a pathway is a good way to say it, or in other words, we created the rails to use the existing pathways that are already there, and enable the founders to do what they want to do.
Mhm. And at the time, how many immigrant, or let's say immigrant employees, did you know, or was there a big market for immigrants wanting to become entrepreneurs but could not do so due to the system is that set up?
Yeah, so when we were building Trimble, right, we were ourselves working out of co-working spaces. There's a place called Hacker Dojo, and working at coffee shops. We were ourselves networking with other entrepreneurs, and so you would see this phenomenon where you go to co-working spaces or coffee shops in the Bay Area at like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. There's an inflow of people. These are people who are working day jobs somewhere else,
And then at nighttime working on business.
That's right.
Yeah.
In the old days when we didn't have the unlimited plans, it used to be the free nights and weekends on cell phone plans. And It was the exact same phenomenon with people. It's like your free nights and weekends when you're not working for your employer is when you're doing something that is creating a new company or ideating on something new. And so when I thought of this, it wasn't just like, oh, this is a problem for me, I've solved this problem. In trying to solve that problem for myself, I had already spoken with hundreds, if not thousands of other people who were like, yeah, I'm just waiting for my green card, or I'm waiting for my spouse's green card. And then as soon as I get that, I can leave the job and start this. And so a lot of the customer discovery in a way just happened organically.
Right.
But then when we decided to start Unshackled Ventures, we went on a very specific customer discovery, which is if we were offering this, so because now there was a product and service to be offered, right? So if we were offering capital plus immigration support, who is the ICP who would be attracted to this? And then we narrowed down the ICP, and then it was like, okay, is this attractive to you? And therefore, would it work? That's how we had the confidence that we should actually dedicate our time to building this.
If I'm not mistaken, getting a green card takes years. It takes years, especially if you're on an H-1B visa. So you're basically effectively decades, right? I'm not even acquainted with this process, but decades, right? A decade. I have to say this. I mean, time is one of the most important things you have on this earth. You don't get more of it. So you're basically buying time for these individuals. I think that's one of the most important currencies.
Yeah, there's two different forms of time leverage that come into play here. One is I will wait for my green card, which means I'm going to work my prime years at a Google or a Stripe or whatever. And so by the time I get my green card, I don't know what my risk appetite will be. I don't know what the environment will be, and I don't know what my drive will be. So that is just
missed opportunities.
That's right.
Missed market timing, even also market timing.
All of that, right? So that's just missed time that you're never going to get back. The second option is do what I did, which is go become an expert in immigration, spend your time to figure out the path for yourself, which maybe allows you to start the company sooner, but you have now spent a lot of your time dealing with regulation, and you will keep dealing with it. So even if you were able to, let's say in that time, if you were able to raise a couple $1 million and get your H-1B sponsored because you have a CEO and you are like the technical co-founder, so you're the CTO, and let's say the visa got approved, your next problem was the H-1B is going to expire in 6 years. There's a max 6 years term. So you need to have your green card perm process, and it's just the gift that keeps on giving in terms of consuming your time.
Right. I think that timing is essentially everything, especially the stage of life you're in. The market timing for the kind of company you want to create are all very, very important aspects of this that not all people will have the ability to do or want to go through just to start their company. So I think that's you're basically creating an opportunity to basically make this happen for them. So tell me more about how that transitioned to Keywork, or how you transitioned to Keywork subsequently.
The Keywork opportunity is more a function of observing so once I became an investor and started looking at the full spectrum of entrepreneurship, right? So if I'm an investor at an early stage, my customers there's two sets of customers. There's the LPs who provide capital, because we need to sell to them, raise capital, and then return capital to them. That's the value creation part. The other customer is the founder who we would invest in. And so when I'm looking at the full entrepreneurial ecosystem, venture capital is a very it's a precise tool, right? It solves for it is a fit for a type of business that has high upfront risk, and if it works, it has the potential to scale globally, right? And scale fast. So there's only maybe 1% of all businesses that fit this mold. So if you look at the surface area of all entrepreneurs, there's, call it 1% of entrepreneurs that are a good fit for venture capital. The other 99% are other kinds of businesses. Some are real economy businesses, which are local, physical, human-centric. Then there's kind of the long gestation, call it infrastructure type businesses, so mining or infrastructure build, which are more like project finance type businesses, or they're government funded projects. And so when I looked at the surface area, I was like, there's a big space here where you have really solid operators who want to start a daycare, or are starting a waste management company, or are doing field services like roofing, plumbing, etc. Appreciating these industries led to another appreciation, which is there is no early stage capital institutional form for these businesses. And so over there used to be 30 years ago, there used to be a concept of growth capital, which was minority ownership investing in these kind of businesses. But that most of those investors moved into private equity, and because there's larger play, more reward. And so there's a vacuum at that early stage, and that has led to a big deficit or gap between demand and supply for these kind of businesses. So if you live in a metropolitan, chances are the demand for a lot of these field services, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing type of businesses, there's more demand than supply. There's more demand for daycares, senior cares, pet cares than the supply. And so the opportunity obviously became apparent that there is a massive opportunity to support entrepreneurs get started, because in the current environment, the only way to get started in these is bootstrapping. So you're putting your own savings and your own time into it. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, that's one way. The other one was VC, I was assuming as well.
Well, VC, again, a VC would likely not invest in a coffee shop, would not invest in daycare, unless you are building in a way that you can scale it to
chain wise, but
right. But even then, at the early stage, a VC will not back a physical type of business.
Right.
You become a liquid death type company, then growth VCs will come in and invest, right? That's after you've already scaled to tens of millions in revenue, or you
but
become
to get there itself, you need to help the beginning.
Correct. So most of these businesses start in a way that the operator will start part-time. So you work in a restaurant, you will go get some space in a shared kitchen, and you start working on your food concept, and you do deliveries from there. Or you are an RN somewhere, you start working part-time at a med spa, and you start your own med spa practice. And then once it starts working, you transition full-time. So a lot of these are experiments that are bootstrapped. You save money to get funded, but you can actually accelerate the process of people getting there. The second big part of this is the failure rate is really high, because most of these businesses, when they start, are under-resourced. There isn't enough capital, and there isn't a support system the way VCs are a support system for entrepreneurs. So when things are not going as planned, you have a mentor network, you have advisors, you can talk to other people that have done this. When you're trying to grow the business fast, you have recruiting support, you have support system that accelerates or amplifies your time. That doesn't exist. So if now we shift the lens to, we'll bring in capital and these resources, it not only helps solid operators start, but it also improves the success rate significantly. And these are the businesses that are most AI proof and also benefit the most from the macro AI shift that we are under. So that's how Keywork came about. Is there is a supply and demand gap. There's a massive opportunity for a capital institution at this early stage, and because of AI advancements, it's possible for us to build an AI native firm and then help build a portfolio of AI native businesses. So it's a very sort of self-compounding playbook.
Yes, and I was going to say, yes, oversights can be really helpful from people who've had the experience and they can give the help and the resource system that's required. Yes, capitals can be very, very useful, but also the idea is that the people who are trying to start and become bootstrapped, they're probably working a job and then doing this after. So it's also the amount of time they're spending towards this that's going to be basically also going to be helped significantly by this process and system. But the question I have for you is how does Keywork identify which people and which I guess ventures or businesses to invest into? What are the requirements?
I wouldn't say requirements, but the archetypes are we're still looking for entrepreneurs that are, it's kind of the same profile as what we were looking for in venture, except for the mad scientist, right? So if we find a deep tech entrepreneur who is technically really sound but knows nothing about business, we may still invest in them and build a team around them for business. But that's not the case with real economy businesses. Other than that, it's still people who know how to operate a business, people with a big ambition, a lot of grit and drive, curiosity, creativity. These businesses are innovative. They're not doing disruptive innovation, they're doing applied innovation. So a new ice cream shop starting isn't inventing new form of dairy or new machine, most likely. What they are inventing is new flavors or a new way of delivering flavors or a healthier way of making ice creams, a better supply chain. There could be business model innovations. So there's innovations. These people are innovative. The biggest piece is that they are solving a need, and that need is largely coming from them appreciating that this particular product or service does not exist in this particular geography or for this particular customer segment. And the other characteristic of the business is it is a low market risk, low tech risk business. So it's mostly execution driven. And if we can find solid operators, the execution risk becomes significantly lower. So therefore, by combination, most of these businesses don't need endless amount of capital infusion. They will raise some money, get going, maybe raise one more round of capital, and then they are on profits and they grow with profits until they get to a point of, we've grown in this one area, now we want to go statewide or countrywide, and then there will be a growth or expansion capital infusion. So identifying the investment process is not too different from how we run venture process, but what we are looking for is slightly different.
Right, but that's removing the barriers to entry to actually be able to create these opportunities where they see a gap potentially in one potential geography or one area where they see there's not a specific need being filled. You can reduce the barriers to make that happen for them by providing the support they need to do that. But one quick question before we move on to a little bit more about you is, how do you identify if someone's a solid operator? Because that is going to be one leading thing that's important.
It's a function of reps. Like when we started investing at Unshsackled Ventures, I didn't know what a great founder profile looks like, and so we looked at hundreds of opportunities before we made our first investment. The more reps you take, the more intuition you build around what is good, what is great, what is below average, and it's a constant learning flow, right? You're never like, okay, this is the profile, and I'm just going to keep finding more of this profile, because there's multiple different personalities that can be very successful in building different types of businesses. And so our view is, as we shift our focus from being venture investors to being real economy investors, we have to unlearn some of the things to learn some new things. The second part is how we build the team. So one of my co-founders is a private equity investor who, for his entire career, has been investing in services and consumer goods businesses. And so he has a perspective of what a solid operator looks like, because that's what he was buying from, right? Those are the people that he was bringing into his portfolio companies. So we compound our learnings from our past experiences and then apply it to hundreds of reps. It's a high volume, high frequency way of learning.
Love it. So I'm going to go ahead and shift this conversation to a little bit more about you, Nitin. And the first question I actually have for you is, between the ages of 15 to 21, when you were putting in the work in regards to your family's business and juggling school at the same time, you definitely did not have a normal social life. How do you deal with that on like the mental level?
I have no idea, to be honest. I've only focused on my health, physical and mental, in the last 3 or 4 years. Before that, this was all woo-woo concept for me. It was all like survival mode. I just need to get from one point to the other. So when I was young, when I was doing that, mental health wasn't even a topic in India. Obviously, nobody was talking about mental health at that time. But more importantly, when survival is the only goal that you're chasing, you're not thinking about all these other things. These are higher level needs that surface after you have overcome survival.
Basic survival.
Yeah. Right. So like 3-4 years ago, when I got to that point where I felt like, okay, I've built enough of a platform for myself, and now, Unshackled Ventures is at a point where it's executing as planned. I can take some time to spend on my physical health, mental health, and it's been a fantastic journey to be on that, because I am getting benefits that I never thought were possible. Right. I'm actually a lot more productive because of the time I'm spending on my health aspects.
Right.
This wasn't a thing when I was 21.
Right. But do you think that gave you an advantage of your threshold? Because if you look at an average individual who is 21, they were not doing what you're doing from 15 to 21, which means the threshold for pain is a lot lower than yours. So do you think that gave you an advantage?
Could be, though high tolerance for pain is not always an advantage. If you have high tolerance for pain, you are likely to ignore a meniscus tear and keep playing, and then find out that what was a partial tear and could have healed is now a full tear and needs surgery. So all I'm saying is nothing is absolutely good or bad. It's all like, in that particular environment, what works and what doesn't work. So for me, that particular journey worked because that's what I felt was right for me to do. Now, I could have made choices and be like, look, I can't do this. I need to go play. I need to go hang out with my friends. I need to do whatever the alternative was. And if I did that, I don't know what the rest of life would have shaped out to be, right?
Okay.
So that's a hypothetical that is unmeasurable. All I can say is I built certain habits that gave me some advantages, and I was fortunate that I could compound those advantages into building the life that I've been fortunate to build.
And one last question before we move on to next year plans or this year plans is, what is something about you or your life that you wish more people knew about?
I don't know. I question everything. Maybe I would position it this way. Because of the experiences I've had, I think everything is a variable. So, okay. I'm born in India, moved to different places, grew up poor. I live a pretty decent life now. Going through these experiences, if I could change so much about my life, and obviously along the way, as things were changing, what got solidified in my mind is nothing is a constant. Where you live, where you're born, what you do. I became a chartered accountant and did not practice accounting because I did not want to do that. I wanted to operate businesses, and so I think that mindset gives me the ability to look at any situation and try to find what are the variables here, and therefore how can I change the situation.
Love it. So where can people learn more about you, and what are your plans for this year?
They can learn more about me on this podcast and and other places where I've spoken. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm very accessible in that way. Obviously, on our Keywork website, we'll be announcing our plans when we start investing, etc. soon. So if you're a real economy entrepreneur, come to keywork.co. Sign up for the newsletter so you can be informed for when we start investing. The plans for this year are very focused in the sense that we just built our founding team for Keywork. We are executing with hyper focus on raising the capital for this initiative. We're building the AI product for ourselves first, which we then will be able to replicate to our portfolio companies. And the speed at which things are evolving with AI capabilities, it is a lot of work. For example, the San Francisco view of AI is everybody's vibe coding, everybody's built agents for themselves, and everybody's living an autonomous life. The reality view is agents keep failing. The reliability is everybody started a lot of projects but finished few of them. Reliability is very low, and for these to become really business useful solutions, we have to make them reliable, cost efficient, easy to use, and capable of working in a team construct. And so that's what we're focused on, is building that infrastructure for ourselves so that we can truly operate an AI native firm and also build a portfolio of AI native portfolio companies.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast, Nitin. This was Aryan Mohindra and Nitin Pachisia.